Hey friends, welcome to Above the Fold podcast. I'm your host, Jess Servion. We're going to be talking about everything in your customer's journey. You're going to learn things about customer experience, brand experience, and marketing secrets that help you drive your brand success. So stay tuned, buckle up, and let's get into the episode. This week, I'm in New York City, and I am joined by Arjan Singh. Arjan is the co-founder of Jolie. And I want you to tell the homies what Jolie is about, because I'm a huge fan, but they need to be a huge fan.
Jolie is a beauty wellness company. We're focused on water, not the water we drink, but the water we shower in, which has been a bit of an afterthought. We've all paid attention to the water that we drink, whether we filter that water by bottled water. We know that the quality of that is not the best. And the water that we're showering in is that same water that we don't want to drink. The contaminants in that water are actually fundamental to the quality of our hair and our skin and tend to be the root cause, not for every issue, of course, but for many of them. We call it step zero. That's fundamental to many issues that we're facing. So our product is a filtered shower head that removes chlorine and heavy metals, but positioned not as a plumbing fixture, not even as a shower head, but as a beauty tool and a beauty company.
Yes. And I will get into why I love Jolie so much, because I'm super excited to have you on here. I talk about Jolie a lot, actually from a customer experience perspective, because I've had a really dope experience.
I want to hear about it.
We'll get there. We'll get there in a second. I want to talk about, but before we do, let's just go in a little bit more backstory about how Jolie came into fruition, right? Can you talk a little bit about your background? In my research, know that your parents were in the fashion industry, and now you found yourself in the beauty and wellness industry. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that journey for you.
I'll talk a little bit about myself first, and then sort of get to Jolie. So I grew up 40 minutes from here on Long Island. My dad is originally from India. Mom's half French, half Indian. She was born in London. Grew up in New York, though, on Long Island. Went to the same elementary school. And as you said, my whole parents work in fashion. They always have. Both my parents. And that's certainly my first love. And fashion is something that, from a garment product perspective, I've always been into clothing, but also the culture that surrounds clothing.
Yeah.
Within particular, I'd say a set of brands. And, beauty is something it's adjacent to it.
Yeah.
These worlds of fashion, hospitality, beauty, anything lifestyle oriented has always been something I've been passionate about. And just before recording, we're talking about marketing and, learning marketing from other, companies and experiences, but really learning through being an obsessive consumer.
Yeah.
And, someone that loves culture, whether it's art or, what a brand might put out there in the world is also culture in a way. And that's really where I've learned marketing is, just being a consumer and being observant and going into shops and galleries and asking questions since I've literally been 6 years old.
Wow.
And that's very much a product of my environment. And my parents.
Yeah. What did you study in school?
I was in an undergraduate business program.
Okay.
But I would go from the weirdest art class in school, one which is actually called uncreative writing, where you're not even allowed to write anything original. You could only plagiarize. And that was just flipping the concept of being in a class on its head, and you then had to take responsibility for what you were plagiarizing. And it was a very interesting, it's a very, quick and dumb way of me explaining the class. But the point I'm trying to make is I would go from a class like that to a finance class or to a management class into something that was a little bit straight-laced. And I've always loved being the black sheep in an environment and standing out, sometimes to a fault, where if everyone's going this way, I might purposely want to go that way.
Always,
And diversity of thought, not just within a group, but within one person, to me has always been important.
Yeah.
And I grew up very left brain, right brain.
Yeah. I think that resonates with me so much because I went to art school. So I actually graduated from art school in San Francisco. I studied fashion. And then while I was in art school, I had to put myself through it. So I was working in the professional world. I worked at a bank and did all these very customer service oriented jobs, but more than just working in retail. I definitely did those jobs too, but really
more advanced and professional, like more of like that customer success type of management. So that's kind of how I ended up in like CX, right? But really from a brain perspective, I am the same, right? Like I took all these like marketing classes, but I also took these classes that were all focused about like drawing and painting and art, right? And like your traditional like English and those things. But I was more really drawn to not marketing specifically. Like I always was drawn to like the consumer behavior of it, but how do we flip the script on all of this and like market to a consumer in a different perspective? Like that's not just your standard traditional marketing ways, right? And I didn't actually find myself in marketing until just recently in like the last like 5 years, right? I actually was really working in like more of those service and success types of roles and like learning about the consumer behavior from a different perspective and more of a relationship. And that's why I'm so obsessed with like marketing today, but also more on the creative thinking pieces of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all that we do at Jolie from a marketing perspective is influenced by, there's one primary belief and one primary end goal.
Yeah.
The belief is people influence people. It sounds silly and obvious, but it drives all that we do. And again, going to what you're talking about, being in service-oriented roles or anywhere where you're interacting with a person and understanding the relationship, it really feeds into marketing and into the way in which we think about marketing.
Yeah.
And the end goal is create conversation. Because how do we get everyone across each dinner table across the country talking about Jolie?
Yeah. And I want to give this as like a tactical piece. I'm going to go back to that customer experience that I had and why I'm such a stan for Jolie. So one, like, and I also want to dive us more into like why like we should care about like filtering our water and, you know, for those reasons. But so I was moving into a new apartment. And I was super excited because I really had like done a lot of research about Jolie and like I wanted to get this new shower head, but I couldn't make it work for my old apartment.
This is in Chicago.
This is in Chicago, which has very harsh water.
Right.
As a curly-haired girl, I know this, okay? So I purchased a Jolie for my new apartment, but I didn't actually like check like the shower head or any of those things, right? And so I move into my apartment and it ends up that I can't make it work because it's a shower head that's like attached to something, but has like
Is it a handheld shower head?
Yeah. I just couldn't think of the words. It's more of a handheld one, right? Yep. And so that's why I couldn't make it work, right? So I was looking at the package and I was like super bummed about it. And I was like, all right, well, I'll go through the return process later. I don't want to deal with it. So like a week later, it's a Sunday. I'm like, okay, like I'm going to have to deal with this, right? So I go to your website, I chat to the chatbot. It's Sunday. Right? Hours of operation said something like Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or whatever. So I wasn't expecting a response back. I was just like, I'm going to go put this in. I'll get back to it later. How long
ago is this?
This is over a year ago.
Okay.
Probably a year and a half ago now. Yeah. So I wasn't expecting a response back. And within 5 minutes, so I like put in the response, went to email, close my laptop, and within 5 minutes, I get a ping that I have a response back from your service team. And they were like, hey, Jess, like, so sorry to hear that it didn't work out. Like, we issued you a refund. Don't worry about returning it, though. Just share it with a friend. And I was like, wow, that's like really awesome. One, I was like surprised by like the response time. I was surprised by the response, and I loved the referral piece of it, even if it didn't work. So then I ended up giving it to one of my girlfriends who's actually the co-founder of my agency.
There you go.
And I wish she was here because she would be like, as the receiver of this, it is a great product. But anyway, so she received the product and now she is a subscriber of Jolie. Because it worked for her. But like that word of mouth, that marketing piece of it, right? It's like, that's turning your CX team into marketers in a way, you know?
Yeah, how do you, I mean, it goes back to, I love hospitality, I love restaurants. That's my real passion is hospitality. And I think it feeds into the customer experience. I think that restaurants should actually be thinking about the person that cannot get into the restaurant because of, they just can't get a reservation or the wait time is too long. How do you get them talking about similar to what you're talking about, where you couldn't use the product, you gifted it to someone else, but don't forget about that person because the expectation is, it's not for me. It won't fit my shower, or I can't get into this restaurant. I'm not going to have an experience here. How can you actually service that person? And then you get them to talk in ways that are outsized because the expectation was not that you were going to be able to share this with a friend for free.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's that word of mouth. It's that referral. It's like the Yelp reviews without being Yelp, because we all hate Yelp. You know, like we get it. You go and look at Yelp, but like Yelp's a terrible place. I'm sorry. But I think what's another interesting thing too is that I purchased Jolie. I couldn't use it, but I was still educated about water and like about, you know, harsh chemicals and all the things that live in our water, right? Yep. So even though I couldn't use Jolie, I did have to like go and use a different product for like filtration, right? But now I'm also educated. And the next time I can go into a place where I can buy a shower head, right, I will buy a Jolie. Yep. So it's like you're also doing like the referral piece of it, but you're also feeding the masses by educating them too.
We knew that, you know, there'd be two main challenges or areas of focus before we started this. One, education, and then education around the problem. A, is the water dirty? And B, connected to that, is it causing my skin and hair issues? Mm-hmm. And then two, installation. And more the perception than the reality. Can I install this? Which it's super easy. There's the rare case where it might not fit, but we were pleasantly surprised on both pieces, but the education piece in particular, where a lot of people had a story oriented around travel.
Yeah.
I went during COVID, I moved, back to my parents' place, up wherever it was, and the water was different. And I just knew it was causing some issue because then I started to break out. Mm-hmm. Or vice versa, my hair was so much better because I moved out of the city and I moved to a home that had water filtration. And we recognized that there is this story around travel and people, not everyone, of course, but there was an awareness there, but maybe the dots weren't connected. And then we would try to connect the dots. And it was now this makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really important brand strategy that you bring up that this might be a hot take, but I think a lot of people miss this, right? Like it's not, and I don't think it's every brand necessarily, but I think that a lot of times like we'll come out and we'll say like, I'm gonna put this product out on the market, right? But then we don't actually research and strategize like how we're going to do it. Like we don't think through, you think through the brand strategy from like a deck and like getting money and beautiful branding, right? But then do you actually think through the insights and the strategy pieces of it?
Right.
And I mean, for y'all, I think you have data around why water is harsh, right? So that's like one play. But knowing that you need to go and educate people because people don't think about these things that often, right? Like,
sure.
And I know I'm on a little bit of a tangent, but there's a lot of reports out there of like, maybe, skin issues, hair issues, but also hormonal issues. They're caused from like our environment and the things that we ingest or the things that like are even topically on our skin, right? And like we don't realize it, but like a lot of these studies are coming out that like so much of our environment are affecting like who we are, right? Sure. And so I think that you guys are very lucky in the sense that like you have a lot of like education from a brand strategy point of view to be able to position your product accordingly.
Definitely.
But I think that a lot of brands, whether it's like, I don't know, a juice, right? Like the juice on juice, but there's a juice on this table.
I'm a little disappointed that I don't have a juice in front of me right now.
I failed you. Bad brand strategy.
You should have a sponsored juice. Happier Grocery from down the block. Shout out Happier Grocery.
Yes. Shout out to Happier Grocery. But also sponsor me. I would love some juice.
They would be so down. We actually work with them. We do. Now I'll talk. I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent now. We have a pop-up down the block in Soho at Prince and Mercer, across from Finelli, if you're a New York local and know Finelli, right outside the Prada store. It's this old red shack.
Yeah.
I call it the charming little red shack on Prince between Mercer and Broadway. It's been there for nearly 100 years. It's a national landmark. Used to be a fruit stand. And we've taken over. We'll have it now until the end of May. And what we've been doing, it's not really a way to sell a ton of Jolies. It's more marketing and engaging with people. You buy a Jolie, you get your choice of a dried flower bouquet. Each has eucalyptus as the base. And then we've built some beautiful flowers around that. The intention is that you hang it underneath your Jolie. The eucalyptus gives a nice aroma. And then we offer food or drink on the house. We were working with Happier Grocery. They did a bone broth that was really good. We had a focaccia with them.
Yes.
And now we're working with a woman named Zoe Johnston. And these are all sort of friends of the brand.
Yeah.
And it's a different conversation when you start by, hey, can I offer you this amazing bone broth? As opposed to, can I sell you Jolie?
Right. Different consumer behavior.
Yes.
It's like, but I love this, right? Again, word of mouth, it's experiential marketing. You're building an experience for your consumer, whether they acquire you or you acquire them or not, they're going to remember that moment, right?
Yep.
I'd love to like break this down even further. How did you go about strategizing this? What was the first thought process?
So my partner, Ryan, and I, our office is down the block.
Yeah.
We pass this thing like every fucking day asking ourselves, why do we not have this? And why aren't we using this? I used to work for the owner of Lure Fish Bar, John McDonald. They're in that building right next to this shack. I emailed John, hey, John, give me the info, who owns this thing? I'm not going to say who owns it.
Yeah.
I will gatekeep
Somebody
that.
does.
Someone very prominent in media, that's all I'm going to say. They own the building. This comes with the building. We had a meeting with her, and then we said, okay, great, we'll take it. And then in terms of thinking through the idea, I've always wanted to do something with flowers and Jolie. There's a story with water there, of course.
Right.
Flowers need water. Eucalyptus is something that many people now are putting underneath their shower head, underneath their Jolie. So we thought that there is certainly something there. And I literally took a photo of the shack. I printed it out and I just sketched how I wanted it to look like, and then hired a guy through a friend to do the build out, Audrey Hilfiger, who we work with, to do the flowers, called my friend Flynn to do a nice drink, turmeric, verbena, like rose hip elixir.
Yeah. And
then another friend, Fabian from Wild Air, to do rose water donuts, rose water, because this was during Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Rose for Valentine's, water for Jolie. And it was really simple. There was no meeting with, three heads in a room, whiteboarding, none of that.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to just operate off gut. Like, as much as we talk about insights, sometimes you got to operate off gut too.
Yes.
And then what did you find after launching it? So like you said until the end of May, right?
Initially it was 2 weeks, Feb 1 through the 14th.
Right.
Up until Valentine's Day. I think Feb 3rd, Ryan and I said, okay, we're going to take this until the end of May.
Yeah.
So very quickly, it was clear that this was worth it.
Yeah.
And are we we're not, if you do the numbers, we're not making money on it.
Yeah.
If you look at it just from that very limited point of view. But if you think through the conversation that's been created, the insights that we're getting talking to people on the street, it is, it pays for itself in that way very easily. So we said, let's take it till the end of May.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you also bring up another point that and something I actually wanted to touch on, because so you start in e-commerce, right? And then you've bridged the gap. Now you're becoming slightly omni-channel, right? You guys are in Erewhon.
We're in Erewhon. We're actually in all Container Store doors across the country. We're in about 75 premium high-end hair salons, which again, I think that is the most important channel.
Yeah.
We are in Happier Grocery. We're in, small beauty shops.
Yeah.
And then we're in a bunch of other wholesale online.
So thinking about the omni-channel process, right? Once you go into retail, you do lose your customer data, right? And I'm not talking specifically on what's their email. I mean it from an insights perspective. How are you thinking through, as you go into retailers, obviously sales will tell a story, but how are you thinking about getting the storyline from those consumers to continue improving Jolie outside of just the consumers on e-commerce?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I will look at the camera for this one, I think data is overrated.
Interesting.
Totally think it's overrated. I'm certainly more of a gut feeling type of guy. I always have been and I always will be. I know when to look at data and when to, and I can be very analytical. That's not who I am innately, but, before Jolie, I was at the Boston Consulting Group. One would think that's a very analytical place to work. And, certainly.
You gave it the middle finger. You were like, fuck consulting.
And I have a saying, which is not a saying that I came up with, but one that I like to think through or think about. Don't worry about making the right decision, make the decision right. Yeah. I had the best time at BCG and was certainly trained, to be analytical. But I was hopefully able to recognize when to trust my gut, when to look at data, when to marry the two, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
In terms of retail, I mean, going into Erewhon, we wanted to do, and I'll get to your question.
You're fine. Yeah.
A few things. We wanted to educate. So going back to the education piece, in a way in which someone would walk in and immediately recognize, okay, this is not just a product on a shelf, but there's a story here beyond this being what might just be a shower head. And like, why is a shower head in Erewhon? Might be someone's response if we just put it on the shelf and off they go. We convinced Erewhon to let us build showers in each store, not a functioning shower, but a beautiful Scandinavian porcelain tile shower. And we had, as sort of end caps, copy that sort of played into Erewhon, which was Erewhon worthy shower water. This isn't just a shower head and this isn't just a market. No ordinary shower head for no ordinary market. Jolie filters your water for better skin, hair, and well-being. You walk into the shop, you can't miss it.
Yeah.
And it looks beautiful. And that got people not only to, look up and see what it was, but also purchase.
Yeah.
It has by far been, they're reordering pretty much every day.
We love that.
Their stock room is not the biggest, so that's a function as well as why they're reordering all the time.
Store.
Gorgeous store.
Yeah.
The service at Erewhon is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, listen, we are in New York City right now, but if any of the listeners out there or are in LA or you ever make it to LA, go to an Erewhon. They get a bad rap on the sense of like, oh, it costs so much, right? But from a service perspective, like, you get what you're paying for. You get an experience out of it. Like, I literally will make a stop into Erewhon for, my lunch or whatever, or like, the hottest like CPG products because they're all there, right? But I'm not just going there to go and purchase something. I'm going there for an experience because every touch point is so well thought out. We had to valet our rental car because like the one in Venice, the lot is like super small.
And they give you samples.
Yeah. And they give you samples. Like, it's a sampling program.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Super smart.
Super.
Yeah, you get your car back and there's juice that's like already sitting in the...
I know. Branded with the juice.
Exactly.
Listen, we're going to get the sponsorship by the end of this
You should actually
episode.
do an episode where you're in the car, you go to Erewhon, let's just say it's, in collaboration with them, you pick up some juice, or you come back into the car and there's not only juice there, but there's a podcast guest. Then you drive around LA and you do like a nice little...
Sounds very similar to...
Yes.
But
That's
good
definitely
idea.
Inspired by something.
Yeah.
In terms of data from retail,
Yeah.
or how we think through, just as an example, next week, our first hire, again, we're a team of 3 people.
Yeah.
Charlotte, she'll be in LA for the week at each of the Erewhon locations, giving a training just because there's been new staff, but also understanding, hey, what are people asking? Are people, we get the data, of course, on certain colors that are selling better than others. And, that all feeds into how we're ordering and all of that. But we're not looking for some like magic piece of information from a customer in retail that's going to completely change the way in which we run our business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's not necessarily like, okay, data, like going back to what I was saying before, like when you talk about like brand strategy, right? Like, it's not even just like the insights in the data, right? It's just validating what your gut is based off of, right? And then also as we evolve, as a consumer evolves, like think about it. Like I said this in a previous episode, but I've been noticing a trend of e-commerce, like not necessarily every single brand or every single category, but I think the consumer is very fatigued with purchasing online. People want to feel something. They want to like go to a store and feel touch
Sure.
the texture of the product, but also experience something that's like on shelf too, right? Going back to the Erewhon example, going back to like your display examples, right?
Sure.
And I think that so it's important from like a data insights perspective to just like understand the consumer behavior trends is my point.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the Shack has really proven that for us. Also, where we're offering something to someone, they're having a little drink and they're staying there and then we're conversing with them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have said, oh, I've seen this online and it's something that's going to be in my shower and, it looks good, but I want to see it in person because I'm not sure if I want the black or the steel.
Yeah.
So then touching and feeling
the texture. Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, there's nothing about, and again, going back to my family's background in clothing, I love a hobby of mine is going into shops, women's wear, men's wear, and just touching clothing, not even buying anything.
Yeah. I think for color picking, for me, I'm like, everything I wear is like mostly black. So, and everything.
I'm all black. Right
And everything in my house is like very monotoned, like colors, you know what I mean? Like, it's either black, gray, or white, you know? So the Jolie I did have was black, and it was a very easy choice for me.
Yeah, that's what I have in my shower as well.
I really need one of these. So
yeah, we've got to figure
I'm gonna have
out.
to move just to get one.
Send me a photo
Of my setup.
of your setup, and I'm curious if there's a way to make it work.
Yeah, I will. I will after this. And I don't want to highlight another brand, so we'll talk about it off camera.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I want to go back to one of the things that you hit on, because I want the audience to know that your team is really small and lean, and I think it's it's something to be obviously like proud of, right? Like when you're in a startup, like being scrappy and getting shit done is like where you have to you have to do, right? I'd love to talk through like going all the way back to the beginning. So you're the co-founder, Ryan's the other co-founder. How did you guys like think about, all right, we're going to go to market, we're going to do this, and we're going to stay really lean? Like, what's your thought process about that?
So Ryan and I, earlier we were talking about left brain, right brain.
Right.
We're both that way, where it's not like we think in a very siloed, one is the numbers, one is the creative. Because we can understand sort of across the spectrum, I think it allows the team to be a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
Because we don't need to hire someone that's like, oh yeah, this guy's going to figure out the creative vision, because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We have one product at the moment.
Yeah.
So we don't need a team to do a bunch of product development. We are very clear on who we are. We leverage, it's not like there's only 3 people full-time that are touching, the operations of Jolie. Of course, we have people in the network, freelance. We do some paid marketing, and we have a team that's doing that. We're not doing that in-house. But all creative is done in-house. All strategy is done in-house. And if you looked at, not that we made many decks, but, an initial deck on the business prior to starting, our execution is one-to-one.
Yeah.
We've really been super clear on who we are and how we want to message. And of course, that's been refined, but it hasn't really deviated from what the main message was.
Yeah.
And still is. And then I'd say Ryan brings in a lot of experience from his background. And this is his second company of his own. And his company before raised a lot of venture funding, had, big team. And he just saw that it was unnecessary. And in fact, I'd say detrimental when you have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah. The too many cooks in the kitchen is very much an issue. I've worked at several companies where it's like, let's hire for every single role, but then like you're not creatively thinking through how you can be scrappy and just get it done.
Exactly.
And then all your money ends up not going to paid because you're just too focused on getting the one person to execute the one thing.
And when you have, you have a lot of people in a group, and like, let's say there's 10 people here and this juice were to fall on the table and it's spilling, it would take longer for 10 people to pick up a paper towel than just the 2 of us. You know what I mean?
No.
There's a term for this.
That's a really good analogy to put together there.
So I'll draw that parallel to how we're thinking about team size.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the person that you said you just hired, though, that's your third hire, you said?
No. So 3 people on the team at the moment.
Okay. Got it.
And we've made now another hire. She has not yet started.
Okay. So we can't shout her out
Focus on wholesale. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's obviously
there will be a big shout out for her when she starts, for sure.
To be honest with you, by the time this airs, she will have started.
Yeah.
So shout out to the wholesale hire. We'll put her name in the show notes later.
Perfect.
That's amazing. I think that's awesome. Like, what are you, like, I know we're talking about like, okay, being lean, mean, like scrappy, right? But I'm interested to know, like, in 5 years, do you think you'll be maybe just 10 people, or do you think you'll be 50? You don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that there's so much opportunity with the current product. The brands also that inspire us, or those that have been, or that inspire me, have been around for decades, if not hundreds of years.
Right.
One company I'll highlight is VIP, VIPP. They're from Denmark. I used to live out there, so I tend to look at brands that are Scandinavian. They started with a pedal trash can in 1939, I want to say. focused on this very iconic silhouette of this trash can in different sizes. And now over time, they've become a big furniture brand. And I think that as a brand, if you put out too much product at once, because there's a sense of newness that you think you need to serve the customer, you dilute the message, you dilute the brand. And, I'd rather us take our time and thoughtfully launch product as opposed to just putting stuff out there. Even just for the sake of clarity of message.
Yeah. I mean, we can dive into this. Like, I have a lot of hot takes on this as well. I mean, granted, the brand, and I'm not going to call out anybody, right? But the brands that I'm thinking about that I see constantly spinning out new products is a little bit different than like, a household item, right? It's more, I see it a little bit more in CPG, which makes sense, right? But at the same time, I think in CPG or in just brands in general, sometimes just double down on the 1 or 2 SKUs that you got and just like keep going at it. And like, you don't have to worry about product development just yet.
Right.
You don't got to go spin out a new SKU on something just to get more products on the market, because you might just be really good at shower heads.
And own it.
Just own it.
And I think it gets a little bit more fun when you're like pulling out the essence or more creative of one particular product. And you have to continue to tell that story in ways that are interesting and engaging and still relevant.
Right.
And we use water as our lens. And we've stretched that really far. And we're very lucky because water is a very elastic theme. Mm-hmm. The shower is something that we all know doesn't just clean us physically, but spiritually, mentally. It's a great thinking session. Mm-hmm. Maybe you sing in the shower, cry in the shower, dance in the shower. I mean, it really does hold this space. Mother's Day is coming up. There was just this post I saw on Instagram this morning of this mom who is, it was, not I think a post that's very relatable, but not in the most happy light, of this mom who's crying in the shower. Mm-hmm. And for many people, it's a respite of your only break where you're truly alone. Kids aren't running around. Hopefully you don't have your phone with you in the shower, though I know many people do. And it is, this 10 minutes of nirvana in a day that's super chaotic. And we like to, message toward that because that's what this space really holds for us, as people, the shower.
You just brand marketed me in this moment. I just made that a thing. You just did, because you're absolutely right. You just spoke to the emotional attachment of of marketing for Jolie, but a water product, right? I was just, while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I was like, that is literally my one moment where my Slack's not going off, my phone's not going off, I'm not on a plane, I'm not doing anything. It's just me just cleansing in the shower, or sometimes a bath. I love a bath.
I love a bath.
Would love to see Jolie come out with a product to filter my bath water.
Wink, wink.
Okay. Girl will be buying. Okay. That'll be my first actual usage of Jolie. But you're absolutely right. Water is a cleanser. Water is this, it's a moment. It's really a showering, and that moment that you have to yourself is it's a moment. And you literally just marketed me.
We have 2 series where we execute upon this.
Yeah.
One is called A Day in the Life, where we feature friends of the brand. It's a video series, about 90 seconds. And we showcase Jolie and the role that it plays in the broader aspect of their day. So for many people, it might be, I don't shower in the morning, I shower in the evening after a day of work. And it's a way for me to just wash off all the noise from the day. Mm-hmm. Not, yes, literally wash off, but more so figuratively do that. Or in the morning, it's a place for me to actually do my to-do list in the and we highlight those moments, sometimes even more so than the skin and hair components in these videos, because we want to highlight the emotional component beyond the function of what Jolie does or the shower does.
Yeah.
The other series is called Water and. This one's the most fun. It sits, and for me at least, it sits in the core, outside the core of our marketing. It's a video series, a little bit longer, 3 minutes, that explores the connection of water to all else that we love in life. We don't talk about skin and hair. We don't even talk about our product, but we highlight water and its connection to painting, oysters, surfing, ceramics, coffee, pizza, bagels, and we do this with an authority in the space. Mm-hmm. So Water and Pizza will launch in a couple of weeks. We did that with Polly G's. Water and Bagels, we did with Apollo Bagels here in New York. Mm-hmm. Water and Coffee, we did with La Cabra, which is a Danish coffee shop here in New York as well. And we like to tell the story of how water is connected to all of this, because it really is in ways that are fundamental.
Mm-hmm. God, that's so
You
beautiful.
know, your favorite cup of coffee, the filtration, if you go to back in Chicago, go to your favorite coffee shop. Are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah.
And
Heavy coffee drinker.
ask them about their water filtration, and they will have a very specific, there's a science to it, where if you're brewing coffee versus espresso, it's a different parts per million of minerals. And it's not that the water should be completely pure. It's more a balance of how many minerals you have in there to extract the flavor.
I'm curious, in your own home, besides shower, do you have any sort of water filtration in like the water that you drink, the water you cook with?
The water I drink and cook with, yeah.
Yeah, same.
Ark, it's a Swedish brand, AARKE. I picked it up at Happier Grocery.
Okay, I'll have to look into them because I like went a little crazy when I moved into my apartment. I wouldn't say crazy. I like literally invested, like went and researched and like found the under the sink stuff. Like, so all of the water that I cook with and clean with and wash my hands with, in bathroom, washer, and kitchen sink and refrigerator.
Oh, wow.
All filtered system.
Love it.
But I invested in it because I was just like, well, also Chicago is like very harsh water. I don't know, like, is New York City harsh water too? Or?
New York, so historically, New York City has been known to have great water.
Yeah.
Back in the day, New York did have great water. The source where it comes from in the Catskills is pretty pristine.
Yeah.
That's changed over time, but also what has been done now for a while across the country is we chlorinate the water. So we put chlorine in there to disinfect and kill bacteria like E. coli, salmonella, things you certainly don't want to drink or shower in. And, New York City is using that. There's a myth that New York City water is great, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
But it's less hard than water in the Southwest, which is the hardest water in the country.
Yeah.
LA in particular.
Lived
New
there.
Mexico, yeah.
Yeah. I actually lived up and down California too, and I can contest, like, LA water, same thing, like same type of experience that I had in Chicago when I moved, was like very harsh water, like definitely didn't drink from tap. But then I also lived in San Francisco Bay Area.
Yep.
And I grew up like always utilizing tap because it comes from the Sierras,
Sure.
right? But by the time it gets to LA.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at your pipes, no one would ever touch water that's not being filtered.
I know.
Yeah.
There's so much education in this. And like, to anybody who's listening, I will actually link out some resources, like some free resources that you can find on the internet. Cause like I've gone down a rabbit hole in this stuff. And like, I just think it's
I can
really
tell you're
important.
hooked. Your home is hooked up.
Oh, yes, it is. And in my apartment that I just rent. And I live in a modern building too, but I just don't trust our sources.
Yep.
So I will link some stuff in the show notes. I did have a couple of questions.
Sure.
One question that popped into my mind is like, as we're talking about like, the filtration systems and shower heads and all these other things, like there are a lot of dupes on the market. Does Jolie have a patent specifically for Jolie?
We in our current version, we don't. I think that there are ideas we have around how we can get a patent for future modifications to the shower head.
Yeah.
We believe whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20, more or less years from now, everyone will be filtering the water they shower in something that's just normalized. And it's like, yeah, of course I do that. And there will be other brands and there should be other brands. I mean, we believe in what we're doing and we know that it would be unrealistic for us to think that we can be the only brand in this massive space and market. Right. So we welcome competition. We do think a lot of the execution from competition has just been a bit, taking, and this is, I'm not exaggerating, copy, cut and paste from our website onto their website. Yeah. Putting ads that say "Don't buy Jolie" and like very much attacking us. Mm-hmm. And we look at it, we sort of roll our eyes, laugh at it, and focus on what we're doing.
Yeah. But I think what Jolie is doing really well is making it accessible and like bringing it down to earth. The education piece, again, is like so important.
People influence people. Data is overrated. I mean, you need that to back it up.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like a friend saying, "Jess, I tried this product. It's changed my hair. You've got to give it a go."
Yeah. The girlfriend that I my co-founder and one of my really good friends that I gave the shower head to, she like experienced acne and like hair stuff. And then she's like been raving. She's been raging on hair, raving about the product and like the success of like what it's done for her hair and her skin. So, I mean, Ken can test like whether it's Jolie or not, like water filtration is just really important if you experience any sort of like issues.
One thing that we had no idea we would ever be able to message around or address was hair loss. Not genetic hair loss, but hair shedding, which happens naturally in the shower. You know, you shower, particularly curly, long hair, you look in the drain, there'll be hair that's there, and that's normal, but there can be amounts of that should not be at that amount, right? Abnormal. Right. And we had hundreds of women in our first, 6 to 7 months posting videos, emailing us, writing reviews, mentioning that they saw way less hair in the drain after using Jolie versus before using Jolie. So Ryan and I looked at each other and we said, okay, we've got to back this up because we can't go out and say that we address hair loss without any like evidence behind it. And this is where, trusting, knowing when to use data versus rely on, because there's so many, magic pills and potions to grow hair. So we didn't want to engage in that without having the right evidence to back it up.
Yeah.
So we worked with a lab in upstate New York. It's a PhD-led lab with 2 women, and they focus exclusively on hair and like hair science.
Yeah.
So we did a study for 4 months where we had a statistically significant group of people that were for 2 weeks not using Jolie. They would measure and essentially take the hair that was in the drain, put it in a bag, send it to the lab. The lab would measure it and weigh it. And then for 3 months, they used Jolie.
Whoa.
And then for 2 months after that, they did the same exercise where they picked up the hair from the drain, put it in a bag, sent it to the lab, and the lab would measure it and weigh it.
Yeah.
And they compared the difference. And they saw 81% of those people noticed a reduction in hair shedding, an average of 46%.
Wow.
So then we went out and, can now message toward that.
Yeah. I mean, whether you're a gut person, whether you're a data person, basically the point that like you are making is that like at some point, like there's a little bit of a research moment, right? And like this was a research moment, and then you positioned the brand around it, right? And then double down on it. So it's like gut feeling or not, sometimes if you have a hunch, do a little research. It's okay.
Yep.
Like use some data.
Totally. Yeah, we're not, I said data is overrated. I didn't say data is useless.
Yeah.
So people place too much importance on data.
Yeah.
And, in ways in which, you might not be able to measure something, or one might not be able to measure something accurately. So don't place even more importance on that data than what your gut might be telling you. And your gut is not necessarily exclusive from data. It is paired with it as well, because you look at a piece of data and your gut might say, oh, this can't be right.
Right.
And you act on that gut feeling and you investigate further and you realize, oh, maybe something was wrong in the way in which that measurement, came to be.
Yeah. And I think what's also really important to remember too, when you do any sort of like consumer research and insight studies, right? You also want to make sure, and just because like my co-founder, she's like from brand strategy, like she has taught me this, like surveys are really good, right? Like you can survey your customer, you can do all these things, right? But if you're going deep into like some sort of consumer research project, you also want to make sure that's in a controlled environment because like outside things could, like for instance, like your pop-up, right? Like it's a good place to get insights and like validate like a gut feeling. But if you're going through a serious research project, like the PhD lab, like all this, that's a very controlled environment. There's 2 different use cases on gathering insights is my point.
Yep. Yeah. One is anecdotal.
Right.
The shack. And the other is like capital R research.
Right. Absolutely. And exactly. That's the best way to put it, right? Like one's very controlled, one's like not, right?
Yep.
I wanted to touch on this because we did start with me having a really great customer experience. I would love to know, like, starting out really lean, like how did you think through like the servicing in customer experience with your product?
So the experience starts, of course, before you even get the product. And we wanted to offer something similar to like what we're doing at the Shack, offer food, offer drink, And we wanted to educate because we knew that was going to be a big challenge or question. So we offered a water report. We still do. And this is customer experience, and I'd call it service as well, where you give us your zip code and we send you a water report that has pulled from the water system the contaminants that are in your water and how many times above the recommended health guidelines these contaminants are. Because we wanted to educate, right? So that was, first piece, customer experience. Let's say you bought the product. We were very thoughtful about how we designed the box and what we put in the box. Often, in particular, if you think about shower heads, if one can even remember, or if one has even bought a shower head before, it's sent or picked up at Home Depot in this plastic packaging.
Cut it.
You got to cut it. You cut yourself at the same time. Then you're running to get a Band-Aid and you're wrapping paper towel around. And it's just not a fun experience. It's a dangerous experience.
Literally,
my mom, whenever there was, any product that was don't open it because you're going to cut yourself. And we didn't want to have that experience, of course. We also wanted there to be everything that you needed to install this. So we created our own wrench. We made it adjustable so it doesn't just fit Jolie, but you can use it again. Plumber's tape, which you're supposed to wrap around the pipe so you prevent any leaks. We wanted to include that. But when we looked at what was on the market, the standard size, we did the math, was enough to wrap around your shower arm like 232 times.
Wow.
You don't need that in multiple lifetimes. So we made our own that's super small. When we got the sample, I looked at it and I said to Ryan, this looks like the cutest tape in the world. He says, dude, we're calling it that. So we called it the cutest tape in the world. And then we also, and this we're not doing anymore because of logistical challenge, we were just curious, what does clean water smell like? And of course, water that's completely pure and clean is going to smell like nothing. But the connotation of clean water, pure water associated with places around the world, the Caribbean, Mediterranean, will have a certain smell to it. So we wanted to bring someone to that immediately because scent is transportive. So we worked with the nose to create a scent that what I had said to the nose was, imagine you're on the shores of Corsica. You close your eyes and you pick up a pebble from the ocean and you smell that pebble. That's what we're going for.
Wow.
And he nailed it. It was like exactly. And what we did is we put it on a little ceramic that was about this big. And that was in the welcome letter that we had in the box. But as soon as you open the box, you're like, whoa, what smells so good? And again, that's going to the customer experience. We wanted you to be transportive and feel something emotionally. And then, one thing that you highlighted was if it doesn't fit, give it to your mom, give it to your neighbor, give it to your daughter. We want that act of sharing something is something that's beautiful. And when it comes from a person rather than a brand, it's even more beautiful. And that's we know what it does. Even if that person ends up not even using it, if whoever you're gifting it to, it's a nice feeling you get refunded and you get to keep the product and give it to someone. I
mean, I
still kind of empowers someone to, you're talking about
raging. It. I'm like, keep saying raging.
You need to rage this week.
I'm raging. I'm still raving about it. But I think that you guys have really curated something very special. That's not just a product. You've curated an experience and a really great marketing play too. And I think, it's important to highlight, like, it's not a marketing play of like, oh, it's just a gimmick. I mean, like, marketing and educating and like providing value to the consumer at every single one of these touch points. And I think that's amazing.
It's fun. We're having a lot of fun. We're right now down the block. I just got sent a video before coming in. There's a We Pace campaign that's going up for Mother's Day. We casted 6 moms. My mom included, in fact.
Wow.
And the whole concept is mom still knows. Like, mom still knows what's up. In fact, she always has. And it showcases mom in different sort of beauty trends in the bathroom with Jolie in the back. Less of a by Jolie and more of an homage to the mother.
Yeah. See, that's amazing. And it's like speaking to that emotional.
Exactly.
And I love it. I think that I can't wait to see like the other products that you guys put out and like your other marketing campaigns. Like, I just can't wait to keep following along.
More to come, for sure.
Well, thank you for coming on. Tell the homies where they can find you.
You can find me in downtown New York, but you can find Jolie at jolieskinco.com. If you're in LA, pop into an Erewhon. If you're across the country, the Container Store, and hopefully a hair salon in every town and city in the US.
Very soon.
Very soon.
Arjan, I really appreciate you coming on. To the audience, we will put all of these things in the show notes, but I'll also add some resource guides on water filtration as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.
Dang, we've made it to the end of the podcast and you're still here. So thank you so much for listening to Above the Fold podcast. For the best of this episode and every episode, be sure to follow us on Instagram and my YouTube channel. And for deeper dives on the secrets to brand success, don't forget to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, Sunday Postcards. All right, my dudes and gals, see you next week.